Good morning. Now, I like to start in the very, very beginning, which one, I wasn't kidding about taking your cell phones out. Usually when I have attended a diversity talk, I end up with a lot of questions, and then I have this editor thing that happens, because you don't want to be that guy who asks the stupid question. Do you know what I'm talking about? Right? So I'm giving you my cell phone number, because I want you to be able to text message me throughout the talk, and as you continue thinking, if you have any questions or anything. So seriously, get your cell phones out. Do I consider marriage a business relationship? That's a great question. Some of them are. Some marriages are business relationships because they can't actually get married in real life because it's deemed illegal, and so they need to immigrate to the country. They need veterans benefits, Social Security benefits. Some people are really, really, really overwhelmed and have a lot of internalized homophobia and are shameful of being out. And so a lot of marriages are business arrangements. I also think a lot of straight relationships are business arrangements because it's a good way to invest your money. You get all these fun tax benefits. You magically get on people's insurance. The whole industrial complex of marriage is deeply rooted in capitalism. So if that wasn't a business arrangement, I don't know what it would be. If it really was this rainbows and glittery unicorn lovey kind of things, then we would actually not have to allow people to do it. We would just recognize that people have made a commitment to each other. But if you look around this room, even within the fraternal movement, we don't even realize we've made a commitment to ourselves. So until that changes, most relationships are some kind of business-related relationship.
But,
here's someone I want to accept.
But seeing the color is not the problem. It's what you associate with seeing the color. I mean,
absolutely, which is more stuff in your head.
That you see a different color. How can you help not see a different color? But now each person associates something different with that color. Now that's a stereotype, and that's the wrong part. You can see color. I mean, how can you not? I don't look at another person and see that's the same as me. But now what you're talking about, the stereotypes that you associate, if you do, with that color, now there's where the wrong, and that's where the relearning has to take place, and that's where you have to change what's in your mind.
What I think is important to acknowledge, though, is that I have no control over anybody else. I can't make anybody do anything. Now, with that said, because usually there's a voice in the head, usually of a mother or a father, who's like, well, I have kids. I have complete domain over them. And you probably do to some degree. I do not have kids. I have dogs, which I'm sort of have control over, usually. But I think that I'm talking about like changing the way people think and feel and be, right? Like I don't think that I have 100% capability of making anybody do anything else consistently. I can barely do that with myself. So I'm not dismissing the fact that other people have things that I disagree with or have other ways of viewing things, etc. What I'm actually trying to do is provide a space of humanity for myself as I begin to listen to what's actually happening in my own head. If I begin to have the conversation what's happening in my own head, I can figure out how I show up in the world. And if I can do that without some of the times getting on the judgment line and then judging other people for not learning what I have learned, it's not about judging them. There's plenty wrong in here. If I can focus on myself 10% of the time, I will have made radical change in my own life. So the rest of the question was, do I feel that Rosa Parks' picturesque story is, I don't know what that word is, is more beneficial than the truth? Oh, that's what the question is. Is the picturesque story more beneficial than the truth? No, it is not. Because if we make the Rosa Parks story this exceptional fluke, we don't realize that it was planned and coordinated and connected to an intense network of people. We think she just got some like wild hair and just said, I had it, right? Every single person in this room at some point in time has said, whatever, I am done, right? Like you break up without even talking, you break up over email, you drop a class, right? You decide like, I don't even want to live with this person anymore. We make decisions all the time that are just like that. It's important to understand that that was not a decision like this. In this story, the picturesque story of Rosa Parks, we could think about like the pile-up impact that day after day after day after day after day after going to the back of the bus that she probably got sick of it. But getting sick of it isn't enough. because you can't make change by yourself. So no, I think the picturesque story actually is another excuse, because we are not powerful as an individual to make that change, and we like to think that Rosa Parks was. And the truth is she wasn't, and she knew that. Why is it that more minority leaders were used as examples of flawed leaders in your presentation? Every human is flawed, and these past leaders are humans. Do you feel it's necessary to put forth effort in distinguishing someone's flaws opposed to embracing the good they have brought forth? First off, that is a hell of a text message, yes? All right, so here's the reasoning. Number one, you may have figured this out, but I'm white. Anyone questions there? Okay, so as a white person coming from a white place who's been educated at primarily white institutions, worked primarily at white institutions, and now speaks primarily at white institutions because higher education is primarily white, because we still don't let everybody in. Because of those facts, when we look at social justice, when we talk about white supremacy, which I believe is alive and kicking, we have let some people who are not white in as examples. And by letting some people who are not white in as examples as a white group membership, we have created a distance and assumed that social justice work are not white people's problems. When we talk about racism, that's something somebody not white is supposed to deal with. That's how that works. The reason why I did that is because I idolized those people for 30 years. And it was important for me to realize I don't need to idolize them, I'm actually a lot like them. It's my story. And so I'm used to having this distance of the people who are supposed to be doing this work. As I grew up in Texas, went to college in Arkansas, went to grad school in South Carolina, you can make whatever judgments and assumptions you want to about those 3 states, I didn't know that white was a race. I didn't understand until a couple of years ago that race is something we made up anyway. So the reason why I use those 3 particular figures is most of you know them. I idolize them. I'm a dork. I had posters of them next to REM growing up because I wanted to be able to be like them. And it wasn't until I was 30-something that I realized I am like them. I'm just still alive. That's why I do that. If it's interesting, I'm doing some research right now on Abraham Lincoln, because Abraham Lincoln's like popped up again as some new like old school pop figure. Lady Gaga's gonna come out dressed like Abraham Lincoln next, I think. So I started doing some research on Abraham Lincoln, who, by the way, white guy. And what's interesting is that, or at least my newest reading that's been really powerful for me, was 3 days after the Emancipation Proclamation speech. 3 days afterwards, he authorized the execution of 67 Lakota warriors and then deemed everyone on the Lakota reservation a prisoner of war. So here, all people should be created equal, meaning we can't own slaves anymore, right? 3 days later, those people aren't people. They're actually in our way because we're trying to build a railroad. Kill their leaders and make everyone else a prisoner of war. 3 days, 72 hours. I don't have to go to folks of color to find reality. Reality is in everyone's life. Digging the silver jacket, very Michael Jackson. I'm not sure, but I think he was a little lighter than me.
Part of it that's so hard to get your fingers around, but if you even just look at politics and economics and the religious implications and all of that, like it's not as simple as, you know, go out and embrace and look, and I think it's as dangerous to go and say, you know, I don't see color, I don't recognize it.
Totally.
Stuff. Like, well then you've negated the very experiences that have created that person's identity. Like how do you manage that in your head? Like I don't think it's as easy to have a conversation.
I completely agree with you. Like, I feel like I'm going to take away some of your thunder because I agree with you, but I don't disagree with you. I mean, I think that there's a difference between, like, knowing the voices in your head and your own personal integrity, and you would use the word protecting your sense of integrity. This is not a weapon. We have enough invisible weapons. I think it's important to know who you are. I mean, some people don't understand that there is a connection between, so you used slavery as an example. Like, there is a connection, I think, between a living wage, immigration issues, undocumented workers in our country, employing undocumented workers in our country, and the fact that there, in recorded history, there are more people enslaved right now than ever before in the world. Like, those things are deeply connected, and there's a moral question here. And I think the morality of things is actually much easier to grasp. All right, so I just got about 4 texts in a row. So first off, yes, I identify as a lesbian. Yes, look how quiet the room got. Yes, I have a husband. If that's confusing for you, imagine what it's like for me. Work it out. Totally true. It's not a business relationship. He's a faculty member. He married into money. All right. So essentially, action and what goes into that action is far more important than the idea behind it. Should I keep trying to change my chapter even if I believe no one is listening? Okay, that is a great question to end on. Number one, if you're taking notes, I would write this down because this is off the hook stuff. Number one, you cannot control anybody else, ever, even your little, right? You can control them for a little amount of time, but they do their own stuff when you're not looking. You cannot control anybody else. If you birth children or adopt children or are raising children, there could be an argument there that you can control them, but if you go back into your own memory, you found loopholes in your parents' rules. So they didn't really control you. You can't control other people. The change that you're trying to make in your own chapter, you should be making that change because it's the right thing to do, whether anybody's listening or not. If Mother Teresa or Gandhi or Martin Luther King woke up one morning and said, you know, I don't really feel that this is effective, I think I'm going to get a job at Starbucks. What's fascinating about that is we'd be in the exact same place we are today. We just wouldn't have as many good stories about them. You need to do what you think is the right thing to do because it's the right thing to do, whether anyone's listening or it has any impact. Because you have agreed to live your life to a higher standard, and that standard looks you back in the mirror every single day. And if it's off, you know that. Diversity is external to you. Social justice comes from within. And if we aren't going to do our own work, who's going to do that work for us? It's literally time we stand up within our own selves and do what's right because it's right. Not because it's working, but because it's right. So I promise I will get back to the rest of the text messages. Thank you very much. I will turn it over. Are there any announcements? Thank you very much.